All right, call the meeting to order. Call. Stand, pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Need a motion on the minutes for January 2nd. Would you like to speak to those?
Not on January 2nd.
Uh-oh, okay. Need a motion on January 2nd? Minutes?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Need a motion on January 6th. Would you like to speak to those?
There was an addition to the minutes after they went out. It's item 6B. And it says the addition was subject to the approval of the paving agreement. That wasn't included in the original motion that went out in the minutes. So that is added to it, and that's what is before you for approval today. That's the addition.
Okay, need a motion?
I've got another question on the minutes. Where is it that we appointed Mark Taylor to the Conservation Board? Did I miss that in here?
It's coming up. I thought.
I believe it was in there.
It's at 4A.
4A, yep.
Need a motion on the amended January 6th minutes?
I move the amended January 6th minutes.
Need a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Need a motion on the approval of claims?
Move it.
Need a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
Because I did not get them, I don't know why. Research.
There is a procedure for you to obtain the claims. We discussed that.
No, the edited claims I did not receive.
Yes, you did. It's in your email.
Human Resources, Ed.
Find it if you say it's there.
We'll get you some help, Mr. Clausen.
Well, that's being researched. but I
Approval
did not
of
get it.
memorandum of personnel transactions. Need a motion on that?
Move it.
Need a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Approval of retiree request to remain on the county health and dental insurance plans.
Move it.
Need a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Is this
Oh.
unique?
Pardon me?
Is this unique or?
No, that's a typical way that we would process that.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Item C, employment outside Woodbury County, discussion and action.
We do have an issue, and I wanted to bring that up today. It's been reported to us that we may have people that are in violation of our workplace rules involving outside employment. I don't know that it's been something that's been discussed a lot previously, and I don't know how well it was enforced. In light of that, we wanted to bring it before you folks and make sure that everyone was aware before we started to address it with people. If you look at the issue, that the discussion basically has is that we just want to clarify those current rules relating to outside employment. The action we're looking for, we request that it be put forth that all department heads, appointed deputies, assistant department heads, and any other employees who work with outside vendors or are involved in procurement of any kind, that they should attest annually to potential conflict by signing off on a disclosure statement. And we'll work with Joshua and some of the others to make sure that we've got a solid disclosure statement that would show up any conflict of interest. And in light of that, we'll work with them to get that done. We want to make sure that we're getting there so that there's no potential issues. The current policy regarding outside employment is posted in your packet. We've received no notices of outside employment in HR since I've been here. And so we expect written notices from all employees who meet the requirements we just mentioned, listed in the handbook regarding outside employment on page 2 of section 9, to provide HR with that written notice by the end of January. And we would ask for the board's blessing or approval and validation of this policy or this enforcement of the existing policy.
And I do,
Motion.
I'm sorry, I do have a question. Are you just referring to the policy applying to department heads under the Board of Supervisors? Are you including other elected officials that are autonomous and, I mean, they don't, all of these are not being
It's not
followed?
elected officials, because of course we don't have any say over what they do, but it certainly would be their deputies. We would expect that there would be disclosure of, outside employment, disclosure of potential conflict of interest, that type of thing. I think it's pretty common thing in corporate America today, if you're working with money or you're working with procurement, that you sign off with some sort of disclosure stating, my wife is president of Lewis Electric, and they're our top vendor, so we may have a conflict of interest there, and that would be the kind of thing that you would relate.
So all employees, basically?
Not all employees, just those that would be involved with procurement, or those that are department heads, and which would then include the deputies as well. Not deputy sheriffs, but the deputies.
Mr. Chairman.
Sure, Pat, go ahead.
Jeremy?
Couple of questions for you.
Yeah.
Did your predecessor leave you any indication of outside secondary employment on the part of department heads or others? Was there any sort of list and transition? I know you probably went through.
There really wasn't a list, but certainly we've had some reported to us.
By those individuals or reports from
Reports from
people other than those individuals?
Yeah, reports from people who have concerns. They're saying that this particular person can't meet their obligation because they have an obligation here at this time. They're actually obligated to us past that time. So we thought this would be a good way to open this up and make sure that everyone's aware of what the rules are, that everyone discloses the things that they should.
So that we in the public understand, you're saying if someone had, for example, another full-time job outside of here and had not disclosed that, that would be in violation of this board's policy?
Yes. And this, again, as I said, is part of the current handbook. They are to notify their department head or HR of any potential conflict like that. We're just trying to formalize it and make sure everyone's aware before we begin to enforce it.
When would you anticipate having that disclosure or expect to receive that on the part of department heads?
What we're hoping to have within the week, we're hoping to have the form out to everyone in the next 7 to 10 days, and then that would push to about the 20th. And then we would have, we would expect to see it all back by the end of January. It's pretty simple. You
And then-
know that that you're working outside or you're not.
Right, and then what's the recourse if someone is indeed working outside, let's say a 40 to 50 hour a week job and fails to disclose that? What happens in your world?
The failure to disclosure, I mean, then you start working down the spectrum of discipline, and you start doing progressive discipline. The first thing we do is approach them, ask them to disclose that, and essentially confront them about it. And after, if they disclose it at that time, then we sit down through with discussion to make sure that the employment that they have is not in conflict with what they have here. Because if they're obligated at times when they're supposed to be here, that's clearly a conflict. Let's say as an example, you were supposed to be somewhere at 3 o'clock every day, and you have to leave here at 2:30, and your job required that you're here from 8 to 4:30. Obviously, we have a pretty big conflict.
And this will be my last question. So let's say that does happen, that you found that there's a clear conflict of interest in someone holding a 40 or 50 hour a week job elsewhere. Do you allow then a space of time, or does this board's policy allow a space of time for opportunity for that individual department head to resign from that other employment, to make a determination? How does that?
We certainly want to give them time to correct the action. And that's why you always call discipline a progressive discipline. It's always progressive thing where you start out and you do your fact finding, your interviews, you do your first step, which is generally a verbal warning or written reprimand. Then you begin to step through the step to the progressive discipline. If they are unwilling to relinquish the other employment or make arrangements with the other employment, so this becomes a primary employment. Because obviously, if we're paying a department head, we're a department head's wage, and we're a secondary employment, one that is not treated with respect that you're treated with, we have a problem and we need to address it. I'm willing to address this with legal determination.
Thank you very much.
Are we opening the door with discussions of the deputy sheriffs?
No, deputies as in, anyone that could potentially be involved in procurement or, that type of thing. So when you're saying deputies, I'm thinking of someone who is of high rank under an elected official. Appointed deputy is kind of what we're discussing.
Well, number two,
Number two, at some point in time, is going to have to be addressed because we attempted to have that be a countywide policy. It is not now a countywide policy. I don't know if now is the time to discuss it, but it does happen to be part of the outside employment county policy. Certainly begs the question that if we want to enforce part of this policy, do we want to enforce all of this policy? I don't know if we can enforce all of this policy short of what my understanding is a legal action to answer that question.
If point two is in question, and this is right out of the current handbook.
Right.
If point two is in question, we can always amend the policy to make it fit recent litigation or.
Well, there hasn't been necessarily recent litigation. There just was, what happens is really elected officials can choose to comply with county policy or not. There really is, they are autonomous is what I understand, and they don't necessarily have to follow any county policy that is set by this board. So you have people picking and choosing and not really a unified approach to how all county employees are treated or what they are allowed to do. I don't know the answer. It seems out of whack to me, but certainly county government is different than many other types of government.
Absolutely.
And,
I don't think this necessarily applies to county officials because clearly they're very autonomous.
I'm talking about the employees under the county, other elected officials being able to, for instance, use their equipment for their second job, which does happen. County equipment is used for outside employment.
It's certainly something we could address as well. I think
I
the
won't
first thing we
belabor
need
it,
to do is
but-
make sure we've got disclosure of that outside employment and. that
Might be a
approval
start.
from-
Might
yeah.
be a start just to see, where the equipment is going and how often it's being used and
Then
how much
it
wear and
leaves
tear.
up to each individual department head to determine whether that is a conflict, and then it's up to the board to determine if the department head's outside employment is a conflict. And with the board determining whether the department head's outside employment is a conflict, then we have a chance to review that if it's been properly disclosed.
Your main issue is you just want the disclosure.
Yes, we want the disclosure today, approval for the disclosure, and and then kind of put everyone on notice that we will follow the basic need of the employee handbook, which is that outside employee does need to be disclosed.
well, I'd like to see disclosure on item number 2 then.
Okay.
All right, that would be a change from, this is in our handbook, right?
Yes, it's
So-
the current handbook.
This would
We're
be,
going to change that number 2 to disclosure.
Yeah, I think we need to,
or qualifying what private gain refers to.
Well, private could, I mean,
Mark?
I have two questions. Mark Merrill, Woodbury County Engineer. When we talk about this being applied to assistant department heads or appointed deputies, would that go down to my foreman level? No. Those men make decisions on if we have a piece of equipment that's down. They would determine which dealer to send it to. Typically, if it's Freightliner, it goes to Freightliner. If it's international, it goes to international. If it's a CAT, it goes to Ziegler.
Then to answer the question, then since they are involved in procurement, it doesn't prohibit them from having outside employees, first and foremost.
Because we do
But
have
it
people
says
who
that you
farm.
Yeah, it just says that you need to disclose it so that everyone's aware.
I just wanted to be sure that, you know, what disclosure meant. They do farm, and they do have personal dealings with some of these people. One of my foremen runs his own grading business on the side. He has a couple of employees who do the work for him. He does his own work on the weekends. There would be overlap between his care of his own equipment and his care of county equipment, essentially. You know, I don't see where this interferes with his job. It doesn't interfere with his hours or his availability in emergencies. So I just wanted some clarification on how the board would approach these people.
And the answer that I'd have for that would be that clearly you're aware of it already, which is
Yes.
the biggest point of this, is that we're all aware of it, that we're dealing from a position of knowledge. We're not blindsided wondering where somebody is or why they're not there, why they're not available, or maybe there's someone else employed that can't leave.
So it would include down to the foreman salary?
Yes, because they do have, from what you're telling me, they do have the ability to procure.
Yes, they do. They would order filters for vehicles from car dealers, from local auto parts stores, so they do have involvement in that. They invoice all those purchases as part of our claim process.
That would be absolutely the kind of person we're looking to find. But we just want to make sure that there's not a conflict of interest there, and have the department head like Mark be aware of it, so that we're all on the up and up.
The other question I have is on number 2, with an employment activity or enterprise that involves the use of county time equipment facilities. It doesn't involve any county time. I have worked as an expert witness for other counties at times. That might involve prestige of the office, you know, the fact that I have been a county engineer for 25 years. Is that the kind of an issue that causes heartburn for?
would you have been paid for that, Mark?
Yes, I have been paid for those services.
The only time that would be a concern, if a little levity in the discussion, the only time that's a concern is if you're being paid here during the exact same time that you're being paid here. And so-
Typically, I take vacation for it when I'm doing that type of work.
Which is perfect. That's exactly the kind of thing that we're looking for.
And I actually appreciate, Mark, you sharing that, because I think you've given 2 examples where even with human resources oversight, those both situations would be fine. I think if I understand, it's a department head who may be working 40 hours elsewhere, and this is actually the secondary employment, but getting full-time wages, if that makes sense. So that's more, if that situation exists out there, that seems to be more what this would address rather than the situations you get.
Because currently I have been engaged on pending litigation by another Iowa county for expert testimony in regard to a lawsuit that's pending them against a plaintiff. So,
Yeah, and that's exactly the kind of thing we're looking for, because we're not concerned in a case like that. This lets us know, makes everybody aware, knowledge gives your power. Then, if we do have that situation, what we're trying to avoid is a situation where we've got somebody that needs to be available in an emergency, can't be available in an emergency because of employment that really is primary. And if we're secondary, taxpayers get the short end of that stick.
The question I needed to know is I didn't feel there would be a conflict in that, but if it is something that gives the board heartburn, then I would need to.
that's the least thing that gives me heartburn. I'll just let you know.
Thank you. That answered my questions.
Okay, are we good?
Yes.
No.
So we are changing in number 2.
We'll address number 2 and visit with Mr. Wooten.
Okay, and then bring it back.
I'm not not necessarily, I just want disclosure. I just think we apply the same process to all of the policy, not necessarily take it out. That was not my intent. But if we're going to talk about full disclosure and we want to know transparency on what's going on, then that falls right into it as well.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good.
So you'll bring it back after you visit with him?
Yeah.
Uh-oh,
Yes, Pat.
Pat?
I heard someone say appointed deputies, you talk about appointed deputies as
Yes.
elected officials. Is that currently in the policy?
Appointed, I believe appointed deputies are considered part of non-elected officials.
No, but appointed deputies, is that included in your, is
Is
that
there-
already included in this?
If you look at it, it's very broad, it doesn't really break it down, but it says, and any other employees, it just says, it says all employees, it says employees.
But you
Doesn't
said that
specify.
you believe it does cover appointed
It
deputies.
should cover the appointed deputies, as far as I understand.
I'll disagree with you politely.
Well, sure, that's fine, this is why we bring it for
I mean,
discussion.
you certainly would comply, and we do most things, is that the appointed deputies are sworn, they take a sworn oath when they're appointed by an elected official, and they serve at the will of the elected official. So I'll visit with the county attorney about that.
Sure.
inclusion in there,
I
because
think that would be good.
we've had those discussions before about appointed deputies and elected officials to whether your policies cover them or not.
Okay,
Just wanted to note that.
That's good, that's very good. To me, it makes sense that that we have the disclosure, but the disclosure then goes to the department head and HR. And so it would be your view, as an example, if this were allowed, it would be what your view is as to whether this is providing conflict of interest.
We certainly expect that, I expect that from the deputies that I believe we have that. But just want to make sure that the resident, that is clear. The policy covers. We just want to make sure it's clear whether these, your policies cover the deputies.
And I think we'll let Joshua clear that up, that sounds good.
Okay, and I do have one thing, just to be clear on the action that's being taken today. I think my understanding is that what Ed is asking for is approval today to go forward to create the form, basically the disclosure form that would allow us to get this information. There's also been some discussion about changing the handbook. And if we were to do that, I think that the draft changes should be made prior to approval, and the final form should be before the board prior to any motion to that effect. So if that's what the board's wanting to do, it should come back at a later time to actually amend the handbook.
But just so I can clarify, there's two separate issues. We could move today on the disclosure form so that human resources can gain that information.
Correct.
And then at a later date, if we so chose to amend the handbook, we should properly notice that upon the agenda and move at a later time
Correct.
on that item.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
I would move to authorize Human Resources to require this disclosure by the end of January.
I would second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Okay,
Thank you.
thanks, Ed. Next item, approval resolution thanking and commending employee for years of service.
I would move that.
Need a second?
Second?
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Okay, boards and commissions. Going to start with Siouxland District Health. And I lost my list. So we had yes or no's on there, so I had a conversation with Kevin, and he's going to bring us back names to replace the two that are getting off. That makes sense? Okay, need a motion to approve the one that's willing to serve.
Move on Judy Turner.
There we go. Need a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, commission to assess damages. How many yeses did we have on that?
It looks like all of them.
Need a motion if we are so inclined to re-up those folks?
I would move that.
Need a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Judicial Magistrate Nomination Committee, I believe there was one of 3 who wished to return, and we have one that has filled out an application.
I would move to appoint Lauren Jansen.
And continue with Rick Mullen.
Just Lauren Jansen for this motion.
Okay,
I would second.
Discussion?
Lauren Jansen.
discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, Rick Mullen says he would continue to serve.
Moved by Mr. Mullin.
Second.
Discussion?
I'd like to have some more information on how the Judicial Magistrate Nomination Commission has been functioning. So at this time, I'm going to hold on that. I have some reservations, and I just want some more information, so.
You do have a motion on the floor, though.
Any other discussion?
Are you referencing any specific comments made at previous meetings?
Yes, and an email that I received on the Judicial Magistrate Nomination Commission. I just, before stating anything more publicly, I just want some more time. So I do understand that the motion's on the floor, but I wanted to give an explanation beforehand.
Okay, all those in favor of Rick Mullen continuing, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No?
No.
Okay. We need a third one. We can bring that back. Okay, Planning and Zoning, Mr. Palello.
Mark, may I speak? Are we, maybe I don't know when to do this motion, but can we just advertise for these other than just solicit names? Are we doing that?
Are we advertising?
That's up to the board.
Yes,
Yes,
we should.
I think we should.
Yes, we should. Can you take care of that? Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
before we move on, I know this may be out of order, but the approval of resolution thanking and commending an employee for years of service,
Yes.
what is that for?
That is for Kathy Sands, who is sitting in the back, and we will bring this back in a frame and present it to her
Would you mind
officially.
just reading that first?
We'll do that next time.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Just wanted to make sure that was.
Okay, Planning and Zoning, John.
Morning, Supervisors. You'll note that your packet information is in reverse order of the agenda items as they're listed. I'll walk you through this. as
My
best I
fault.
can. The first item is found on page 5 of your packet information. It's an approval of an appointment to the Woodbury County Zoning Commission. This is for a 5-year term. It replaces one of the remaining 4 members. Mr. Grady Marks completed his second consecutive 5-year term, and thus he's not available under your policy for reappointment. I have provided you with a list of the remaining 7 applicants that meet the residency requirement. Be happy to answer any questions in regard to any of the applicants. We're asking you to appoint a single applicant to a 5-year term on the Woodbury County Zoning Commission.
And there's,
I'd move Barb Parker.
I would second.
Is she willing to serve?
Yes, I talked to her.
Good.
She's willing to serve. Wherever we feel that she is needed, she will serve at our
Okay.
discretion.
Very good. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay,
Thank you.
now that changes things, right?
It does, and I'll explain why here in a second. Next agenda item is found on page 3 of your packet information. Approval of appointment under the same terms to the Board of Adjustment. Again, board existing 2014 member, Corey Meister completed his second 5-year term, same scenario, we're just replacing him on the board. In this particular set of facts, we have 6 applicants and are asked to fill 1 5-year term. Obviously, one of those 6 is Barbara Parker. She's deleted from this consideration here. You can select any of the remaining 5 applicants.
Need a motion?
Well, I think there, once again, are a lot of qualified applicants. This isn't always easy to pick. I just throw one out. I'll nominate Ken Gard. Kenny Gard.
Need a second?
I'd second.
Discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
Thank you.
Kenny's a digger, so you,
Yeah,
he'll work.
Ken has been on the past Board of Adjustment Zoning Commission membership lists in the past for the county. He'll do a good job. No problem with that. Notification process to the applicants come out of the board office, or would you like planning and zoning to do that?
Yes. Yes.
Yes to, you're doing it, thank you. Last agenda item I have is related to continuation of a process for the Clausen Acres rezoning process. We've got about 26 acres at the northeast corner of Buchanan Avenue and 155th Street, which was tied to a subdivision process wherein you approved the final platting last week. This is a request for a public hearing, close the hearing, and then the second reading of the proposed rezoning ordinance amendment. I'll answer any questions regarding the issue.
Need a motion for the second reading?
Move it.
Time out. Can we close the public hearing first?
Oh, I'm sorry. Need a motion to close the public hearing if there's no one to speak.
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Now,
We just
We're
have the
done.
second reading. I'll be happy to answer any questions regarding the subdivision from your board or from anybody in attendance.
so we'll read again next week.
We will have another third public hearing next week, and you'll be asked to approve or vote on the ordinance change.
Very good.
We will then publish the ordinance pursuant to your policy.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Secondary roads, Mr. Nara.
First item we have is an approval of a pre-construction agreement with the Iowa Department of Transportation. This is for work on Highway 20 and Highway 31. These 2 projects are going to be mingling with our existing work on County Road L36. That's the road that is just on the west side of Correctionville and heads north over the Dixon Bridge toward Plymouth County. The state, as part of this project, will be realigning and repaving a portion of the intersection at the north end of that job. Where we are involved in this pre-construction agreement on the south side is we had worked with the city of Correctionville to pave, I believe it's Aspen Avenue, south to a point, and then it goes into town on, I believe it's 5th Street. This was part of a construction agreement with the county. That portion of the intersection will also need to be redone, and this is allowing the state to do the design and construction on the project. There's no expense with this to the county.
Need a motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Consider approval of agreement for professional services with Veenstra and Kim.
This item requires both the signature of the chair and the auditor. There is a tab noting where those need to be. This next one we have is an agreement with Veenstra and Kim. They are the lead designer for the Dogwood Trail project with the city of Sergeant Bluff. As part of the work that's being done on grading and paving Dogwood Trail. We've requested that work be added to that project to take care of the county portion of the road from the beginning of Project Point. Projects run from west to east, so beginning of Project Point on Port Neal Road, which is south of where the new intersection of Port Neal and Dogwood Trail will be, over to the DOT overpass approach section. I propose that we would do this portion of the project as a concrete overlay and have those items included within the plans for the city of Sergeant Bluff. By doing so, while we're picking up some engineering expense, we should save more than that by getting this project included with the project, with the city project, and save money on the unit cost of the concrete overlay that we're proposing for that road. This would be a very expensive 850 feet of road to upgrade at a later date as a standalone project. Then when this is completed, we'll have this corridor in very good shape. It'll be, a project that will be continuous, and with the work being done on the west side of the bridge by the city of Sioux City, we'll have that entire area from the rest area all the way through 75 as an upgraded corridor for the level of truck traffic that we're likely to be seeing in that area over the next few years.
Need a motion?
Move it.
Need a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
This also requires the signature of the chair and the auditor. That's all I have for today.
I want you to know that it was noticed that your department was at the fire late evening, Saturday night.
That is part of our task, and one of the things that's included under our current snow ordinance is that we do assist in those type of incidents. We had water that was being brought out by a tanker load to fight fire. Some of that sloshes, gets out on the road, creates a hazardous condition for all the responding vehicles and emergency responders, and we did send out a truck with sand and salt on board to assist the firefighters in those cases. We do similar with ambulance calls. 24 hours a day, we do respond to emergencies.
Thanks for what you do.
Thank you. Okay, Board Administration, Karen James, lip tax suspension for GW.
Move it.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, County Treasurer Michael Clayton, who's in Des Moines, received semi-annual report of funds in the hands of the County Treasurer at close of business. Need a motion?
Mr. Chair, can you clarify the motion? That are we moving that we've received?
We're just saying we're receiving this as a document. He's verifying how much we got in the bank.
I move the verification of the receipt of this report.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Discussion and action on new format for board agenda. Jackie, you included a bunch of formats. You want to talk about that?
I did. I just, I guess I was looking it up for my own benefit, looking at some other counties. I think it's best practice when we are looking at changing anything we do to look at our counterparts, our peers, on just see what's going on around the state. So I just included it since I had it. I just gave it, actually Karen helped me with it, and I just had her included in the packet just to see what was happening around the state. And there, as you can see, that people do things a little bit differently everywhere. So there is no right or wrong way to do it.
The only thing that's common amongst these is they're doing budget.
Yeah. And I try not to necessarily do January, but I think we
Right.
pulled some January ones because that's not always reflective. I guess my concern, and what I want to know, I had a problem last time when we looked at the consent part of the agenda, but I don't think that was in your new proposed. And I agree with that. I was just uncomfortable with the consent agenda. I don't think it's transparent
Right.
for citizens, so I was glad to see that you had removed it on your proposal. And the only other thing that did come up that I thought was interesting that we may want to consider today is one of the counties had citizen concerns first thing, and I thought, what a good idea, because if somebody wants to come and weigh in on a topic, you know, then they would have the option of waiting for the whole meeting if they want to, or they could come say their piece and get out. So I would move, well, I guess I'll stop and see if there's any more discussion, but.
I wanted to thank Supervisor Smith. I think this is very, very helpful, and I think there are some very good things in here. The way that you showed us that Blackhawk County does it is, and Lynn County, they have public comments early on for addressing agenda items. And then Dubuque County has another time later on for anything that was not on the agenda that is of concern, that couldn't be acted upon, of course, because it's not properly noticed. But I think both of those things would be a valuable contribution if there are two different times, one to take public comment on those things that we're addressing that are on the agenda, and then another comment period at the end for those things that are not. I also like that the listing of supervisors' phone numbers and emails on the agenda as well. So any format, I would be supportive of those if those are part of what you might find amenable. I think it's good.
I agree.
Well, what might be easy is just to, at this point in time, maybe accept the proposed, we call it the Mark Monson agenda.
No.
Oh, come on. I like that, the Mark Monson agenda. Just for sake of where it is, as opposed to any other county, with maybe adding a citizen's concern at the beginning of the agenda.
You said something about time-ordered stuff. You wanted to move that?
Is that, Mr. Chair, is that further on as far as the
Well, if you-
meeting times, or is that something we should discuss now?
Well, this is going to be a work in progress. I'll guarantee you, we're going to have to tweak it probably as we go.
I was thinking as I wrestle with this about timing, and I know we'll talk about meeting time, but time certain actions
Right.
possibly being later on. But I think as far as the agenda format, having at least a discussion, an opening for the public, as Supervisor Smith may suggest, early on and then later.
Perhaps early on means after the time sensitive as well. So still in the beginning, but
Yeah, that works for me. So as it is, but add a public comment at the very beginning and put the supervisors' names, phones, and emails at the top. Does that work? Knowing that it probably is going to get tweaked as we get into this. And no guarantees on next week. Yes, sir.
A couple of things is that first, as I've gone through and reviewed different agendas, that's some things that I've looked at, and I'm just trying to get an idea of what your intent is, and then I have another question to follow that pertains to that, is that I saw a lot of those that they do have the time for, it's set out that they can speak two issues that are going to be on the agenda, citizens, the first agenda item. And then during a business meeting, would you have those same folks then speaking as you address those items that are on the agenda? I guess that's what I'm looking for, is clarification there. And then at the end, just like you said, is that for other items that aren't on the agenda previously. So I guess I'm trying to get an idea of what your intent is that you're going to have that at the beginning of the meeting where folks can talk about that, and then during your discussion of items that are on the agenda, are you going to still allow for
That's the way this is written.
people to do that? Okay. And then also a concern that was brought up by some citizens is that the practice, and we've talked about this before, with Supervisor Smith, at one time told me that there was some sort of requirement to have folks who come into the meeting to sign attendance and put their address down. Previously, in the minutes I had included when someone spoke is that their name and address. And citizens, had a couple of folks that talked to me about they didn't like that, they didn't appreciate that, and so that's what.
Having to sign in?
No, having their name and address included in the minutes, published, and then also signing in. What happened, when we discussed this previously, is this City of Sioux City took that when folks, when they were passing their deal with the dog ordinance, was that folks that we're talking about happened to comply with that, the city, and then they went up and said that they had a dog or something, and the city went and used that list to send letters to those folks to tell them they were in violation. So kind of acted as a disincentive for folks to come and talk and do that. So I just wanted to make you aware of that and let me know what you think is proper for those citizens.
Well, I'll just weigh in a little bit on the signing in. I didn't make that up by my very own self. That came out of human resources, and I think it was a Title VI requirement. So whether I agree with it or not didn't seem to really matter. That came from a higher authority than myself.
Can someone explain that?
Hopefully Gloria can, because she's the one who told me. Yeah.
Well, could you explain that? Go ahead. Step forward, please explain it.
Resources. We had a federal official that came and asked me many questions. This was like 2 or 3 years ago. And it was brought to our attention that there was a list of things that we weren't doing. They were very simple things, but one of them was signing in for meetings. And they recommended signing in and including addresses, but the address part was, up to the person, but definitely signing in their names. And that's kind of where that came.
And who said this? What
There
authority?
was an elected official, her last name is Reese, R-E-E-C-E, and she was from Des Moines, but originally from Washington D.C., but she was signed to the Midwest. She had Minnesota, Nebraska, Iowa, and I think Missouri. And she traveled around to make sure Title VI was in compliance.
What is Title VI?
Title VI is saying that we're give equal opportunity to all people, whether they have handicap, they have any kind of a hearing, vision, physical, able to get around, they're handicapped or have an impairment of some sort. And so they're treated equally with all people. They're not being.
So you
I
said it
can
was
give some assistance with that.
Yeah.
This was all part of our federal aid audit process. We're required to comply with the Federal Civil Rights Act. Title VI is one of those federal civil rights requirements that deals with access to the public activities, whether it's lettings, whether it's decisions on the use of federal aids, our construction program. Virtually, because we receive $1 federal aid, we're required to be in compliance with these various federal codes. The attendance was one of the things that when they did this audit, and when the board then signed an agreement that they would be in compliance with Title VI, this was one of the requirements that they added. So this wasn't something we just dreamed up.
Now it says, but you said requirements and Gloria said recommendation.
This was their recommendation for complying with the requirements, I guess, if that's what I said. That when these folks come out and do these audits, they use the friendlier term, but it really gets down to very much a requirement. And we did sign a Title VI compliance that I think we're going to be audited every 3 or 5 years, where they come back in and look to see if we have taken the steps that they recommended at the prior sessions. We're just passing the word. This isn't one where the messengers be killed. But we do receive federal aid both from FEMA, Federal Highway Administration. Gary receives Homeland Security. All of those grants that we tap into for providing additional services for the county are within the purview of those federal regulators and that federal audit process.
Oh, I've got a question. If we are required to get that list of folks, are we required to publish it?
I don't know that you're required to publish it. I think you're required to have the records where they can be examined by auditors and the public to see who's in attendance at the meetings. I haven't seen anything where it's required that you put that in the paper or put it in your minutes.
Well, if you don't put it in minutes, you're not gonna save signing sheets. So if you have to save them, they'd have to be included in the minutes. That's the only sure way to get that done.
This is fun.
You know,
What's being done with the sign-in sheets right now?
I don't even know.
We filed the original with the auditor's office.
We are the keeper file
Okay.
with the minutes that are taken.
The question is, that's sufficient?
Keep that.
And I was involved a little bit when we initially made this change, and yes, it was a recommendation, and you wouldn't have to have it at a meeting where you didn't have something that you're dealing with federal aid dollars necessarily. But as far as making that determination each meeting that we have, whether we're touching on those issues or not, it's easier to have the sign-in sheet at every meeting, have that available, so that when we are audited, they can access that.
Okay, so we don't have to put them in the minutes.
Right, there'd be no requirement to have it in the minutes. There are times when, if you have maybe a zoning issue, where certain individuals that live within a designated area have, additional rights that a member of the public may not have. And it would be important to note if one of those individuals speak, to note that in the minutes and what their address is in relation to, whatever the proposed zoning issue is. So there are times when you should have addresses in the minutes.
We got to get you a microphone. John?
I just want to expand a little bit on Joshua's comment. We have found we do the same thing for zoning commission and board of adjustment meetings where they sign in, leave their address. Obviously, the validity or verification of Woodbury County residency is important to our members, both the commission and the board, as well as the reference that Joshua makes to certain rights of individuals that live within a certain distance of the impacted parcels. We also find that sometimes somebody scribbles a name down and it's highly illegible, and sometimes if you have reference to an address, you can figure out who was really at the meeting to put in your minutes. So there are reasons to have that information. Whatever decision your board makes in regard to your minutes and redacting address information in the process, we would probably follow suit in our boards and commissions.
and I guess to follow up, I would mention that those sign-in sheets should be kept. One of the things that they look at under Title VI is whether there is outreach to the communities that don't have English as a first language. So they will look at those names, and this is the federal inspector, to see whether we have attendance by people who are immigrants to the nation, into the area, to make sure that you are providing adequate outreach, adequate notice with the website. There were other things that went into this compliance. Some of it went into changes that were made to the county website at that time to be sure that, I think the translator is on there, isn't it?
Yes.
For it, so that people from other ethnic backgrounds can glean information from your website. The sign-in sheets would be looked at by that auditor. This was one way of complying it, other than having Karen sit there and say, no, looks like an Asian, looks like a person of Hispanic descent, and trying to keep track of that in the boardroom. So these are things that those federal auditors are looking at.
Okay, we kind of got off the track here. It's good discussion, but go back to the agenda. I would take a motion to add public comment at the beginning and the end, and to add our names and emails and phones.
I'd move that the agenda format put forward by the chairman, modeled upon the city of Sioux City, be adopted with board approval for discussion on agenda items earlier in the meeting, as deemed necessary by the board during the meeting, and public input for non-agenda items of concern toward the end of the meeting. And that our supervisors' names and contact information be added.
Need a second? Knowing it's probably going to come back for a little tweaking. A work in progress. Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. All right, discussion and action. If you want to pass these up and put them on the counter, I gave you all a bid that I opened last night at 4:30 from KES, the folks that put the equipment in here. I had a surprising phone call on, I think, Friday from Al Jordan. He offered to let us use the equipment that he uses for the Board of Appeals. There's some desks downstairs that he had built. I'm a little leery of them because it looks like you're hiding behind them. They have a front on them that comes up to about here. I'm not sure that's the desks we should use. They're free to use. The other thing he offered was a large screen TV that just happens to be on wheels. So this bid does not include a large screen TV. It does include the ability to be portable. There are, in the mix, 7 microphones like we have right now. That includes Pat and Joshua. And 2 Shure distribution setups. Well, one of those is like a public mic. The audio mixer, presenter podium microphone, malt box for the press so they don't have to stand over us, they can be in the back. Video switcher, which is basically what Pat is using, and a PA system, and the cables, etc. Now, we do not pay tax, so you're looking at just under $15,000. I believe this cost about $6,000 or $7,000 to get this up and running with the cameras and so on. So personally, I don't think it's too bad a bid. And it would be capable of being moved and stored weekly so that folks didn't happen to use it or take it. Discussion.
I think the news of the TV is great news. That would be available for virtually every meeting, is that correct?
Yes, it would. In my travels on this, the courts have jury sessions down there. They're usually on Tuesday morning. We would not interfere with that. We could move in there, well, unless we don't change the time, then we're going to interfere a lot. But Al Jordan uses that area for his Board of Appeals, and that's usually just during the month of May. So I think it's a good thing. There's no people down there except building services, so we're not interfering with anyone's business. Comment, discussion.
We've used this vendor before, correct?
Yes?
I believe before we were able to preview the equipment, didn't we look at it? I think I remember looking at the equipment and before we ever made a decision on I don't know if that makes a difference, but we did have quite a bit more time to digest what we were buying. It's hard for me to know what this is, just looking at a sheet of paper not being very...
Pretty much the same as what we have.
May I recommend that we put this on hold until we do the other ones, because
That's fine. All right, let's go to B. Well, actually, let's go to C, because that hinges a lot of it. The discussion last week ranged from 4 to 7. I don't have a preference.
Mr. Chair, I would move a meeting time of 4:30 to 5:30 with any time certain activity to occur after 5 o'clock.
Move to discuss.
Okay. Pat?
We just have the motion, we just need a second at this point.
She did. Mr. Clausen?
number 2, late afternoon will allow more people to attend. Who made that determination? What facts do we have to back that up?
More people to attend the meeting?
I think given the, may I answer? I don't want to be out.
Sure.
I think given the fact that generally speaking, 80% of people who are working hours of 8 to 4 o'clock, 8:30 to 4:30, 9 to 5, so to speak. That would be more open to them, who would be able to not have to take off of work to be able to attend meetings.
Well, in your motion, you said 4:30.
Correct.
If you want to accommodate people, I would think you go to the later hours. But I don't know that you're going to accommodate any more than you do at this time of day. I mean, is there any place that you've gotten this information from?
I think common knowledge.
I think.
I mean, at 4:30, I think it's based on our discussions last time. I don't think there's a perfect time. I mean, otherwise you run into the dinner hour, and so in my motion I thought, well, if we could stay out of the dinner hour, because I respect that families would like to eat together, not having time certain activity take place until after 5 o'clock would give a majority of people, or I'd say 80% of people, time to be able to attend, who wouldn't have to take off of work. And I think of school teachers who are able to maybe attend a 4:30 meeting, but would have to take a vacation day to be able to come and present or to hear public discourse that might affect their lives. And so that's the, I mean, I'm coming from the education background world, but that would be my assumption.
If we're going to move it, I'm not for moving it, but if you think that we're going to accommodate more people, then I say let's put it at 7 o'clock at night, or let's meet at 6 o'clock in the morning.
I don't think 6 is going to work.
People are available then. I mean, they don't have anything to do unless they go in at
Might
5
want to
in the
sleep.
morning. Well, yeah, you might want to sleep at 4 in the afternoon too. I don't know those facts.
I think
I don't have any facts.
But that's, I think the general assumption is, I haven't polled everybody in Woodbury County, but if you asked them, would you be more amenable to making a 6 o'clock a.m. meeting or a 4:30 p.m. meeting? I think more people would be toward a 4:30 p.m. meeting. And in a move that I want to applaud the past board of doing, which is to show these on the internet. But one of the comments at the time was, who can attend meetings if they're at 10 o'clock a.m.? And I think that's the point. And again, I'm applauding the board for putting that online, but that comment, I think, is telling that not as many people could attend as they could when they were outside the normal work hours.
I did do some research. I'm sorry I didn't get this. I worked on it yesterday, so I didn't get in your packet. But I did, once again, look at our counterparts, the other counties in Iowa, just to see when they were having the business meetings. And I will say all 99 counties are holding them during business hours. There were 2 counties that I found that had 3 meetings during business hours and 1 in the evening. I called both of those counties. One of them has discontinued their evening meeting because the attendance did not increase. The other county is continuing to do it, but it's a planning and zoning. They're meeting with planning and zoning. So they cited problems with department heads being able to attend, costs going up. That's why no one has moved to the evening meetings. I talked to a couple school board members. They're certainly not happy with the citizen how many are attending their meetings, even though it is later in the day. They're not satisfied with their numbers. So, not that you have to do what everyone else is doing, but certainly I think it speaks to, you can surmise more people will come. If you move it, doesn't mean they will. Now, what I did think maybe was a trend, and it seems as though everyone is trying this, and Mark, you brought this up, and it seems to go along with the initiative statewide, and that's to do more outreach meetings. People weren't necessarily moving the business meetings because it's more expensive to the taxpayer, but they were either sending 2 supervisors out to council meetings in the small towns, or they were doing joint meetings like every other month. So there was, an attempt to try to be more accessible, but it wasn't necessarily by changing the business meeting of the Board of Supervisors. It was almost an addition of a meeting, if you will, or because a lot of times if they had joint meetings, they still had their regular business meetings during the day, and then it would be an additional meeting in the evening. So that's what I found. It's not real deep research, but I wanted just to give you a flavor of what's going on across the state, and rather than be premature and incur extra costs without, I just don't want to be too quick to this. I understand the sentiment. We want more citizen input. We do. All of us want that, and I appreciate the fact that we're talking about a different time, but I don't know if we should change everything at once. I think we could do more outreach, keep the meetings. We do need a different room, I agree with that. We're gonna have to work it out with downstairs, and I don't have all the answers for that, obviously. But I think if we could maybe just add an additional meeting a month or every other month and go out to those towns, that to me would, and whether we all go, whether we divide up. I went to several of those city council meetings when we were rolling out our 2% loan program with the former economic development director. I went to most of them, actually, and their attendance wasn't too hot either. Let me tell you, it was just the people that had business, of that evening, that's who came. So, they struggle with the same thing, and I don't know if it will help if we show up out there. I don't know.
Couple thoughts. I think that's an interesting statistic, but I would just mention also that we're probably 94 of those counties are smaller than us, and we certainly have the potential to draw, attendance if we coincide this with, a change in meeting place, and I do think the evening time makes more sense than the morning because we don't always know how long these meetings go. To be more respectful of people outside of work, I think an evening makes more sense, especially with time-sensitive items at the beginning. Another comment that hasn't been mentioned, I'm sure we've all gotten comments about accessibility in general, but from residents, but a lot of people have told me about parking tickets and the fact that, if you attend a typical meeting, you're gonna have to either leave to pay the meter And that's just, you know, a function of where we are. But the 4:30 time does alleviate that. And, you know, for people that say that is their main reason for not coming, that's certainly a draw, so.
I guess I weigh on the city council at 4. To me, you know, 4:30 doesn't make any difference, but parking meter, that's a big issue. $9 a ticket. I've had a lot of people talk to me about meeting time, and they think it's a really great idea. I don't know, maybe they won't come. Maybe we need to revisit this, but you know, we can go out and see Don Dixon in Correctionville.
Well, you know, there's a host of other issues that come up with later in the day, and certainly, you know, I can see both sides of it, but for instance, Karen, that she's an hourly employee, her work day ends at 4:30, so she paid overtime. I don't know what the county attorney's other obligations are later in the day. You know, you just need to radiate out in your thinking, at least I do. When one thing happens, a series of, that's one thing I've learned. The decision seems simple, and then all the ramifications, they just radiate out so far. So
I do have a motion on the floor for 4:30 to 5:30. Any other discussion?
I just think before we vote to change, that we put more thought into it, some research into it, because I just don't think that's happened.
I vote to table, change, or I make a motion. Can I do that, Pat? Make another motion to table,
Motion to amend his motion.
to amend it?
Postpone. No, you can, at this point, you can do a motion to postpone.
Okay, make a motion to postpone until maybe we put some other things in place as far as outreach.
The clarification on the original motion was for the beginning of what, February?
We didn't talk about that, but yes.
So this wouldn't be like next week.
No, or the week after.
I think we'd have time to iron out some of these issues personally.
So just to clarify, Mr. Chair, the motion on the floor right now is from meeting times from 4:30 to 5:30 with no time certain business to occur until after 5 o'clock. And Supervisor Smith, you are asking for postponement and making a motion. Is that correct?
I think that's where I'm at.
So we need a second.
Is there a date that you'd want to postpone to? 1st of March? 1st of August?
If you're more comfortable, 1st of March, I guess, okay.
Second.
Discussion.
We have a second.
Is there discussion?
Yeah.
I would like to continue on the 4:30, 5:30 time, and so would just want to let you know I appreciate your comments and took some of those into account on the 4:30 to 5:30 time. But would ultimately do this.
Your 4:30 to 5:30, is that an hour? Is that what your motion is? You'll have a meeting from 4:30 to 5:30.
And as necessary as time allows on the back end, if we have to go to 6 o'clock or 6:15, but the start time of 4:30 with no time certain activity until after 5 o'clock.
Well, if you look at today, which is probably typical, you're talking at least, 2 hours. So You wanna start at 4:30, but you don't care when it ends.
I do care when it ends, but I'm quite certain that once we take up and become more functional and work out some of these things, that meetings will flow just as efficiently and will be accomplishable in an hour, hour and a half.
I have a huge problem with March 1st. That's just killing it. Okay. It's just putting it off.
Would it be possible, and I mean, if that's too long, I would like to know what kind of cost will, I mean, how do we estimate? Are we going to change who comes to the meeting? Are we still going to have security? Will they go home at 4:30? Are we going to,
My understanding, in talking with the sheriff and Ed, that they can accommodate us.
At what cost? Can I get cost figures for that then? Of what it will cost to be here for, I'm assuming an hour, hour and a half, after 2 hours after we close every night?
Well, it'll be the sheriff or Major Stallman or Major Wick, and we don't get paid for that.
We're salaried, so it doesn't make a difference.
All right, I'm going to call a question on the amendment to postpone. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
No?
No. All right, the amendment on the floor is 4:30 to 5:30, or the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay. Here we go back. New meeting place and start date. Excuse me? Pardon me?
You need to announce
The vote? All right, the vote on the postpone was 3 to 2 no, 2 yes, 3 no. And the vote on 4:30 to 5:30 was 3 yes, 2 no. Okay.
When does that start?
Pardon me?
Did you set a start time for that?
At least February. There are some factors, well, we need to go through the rest of it first. New meeting place and start date, again, the date comes up. I would take a motion on moving our meetings to the basement.
Motion.
Need a second?
Second?
Discussion.
I'm not opposed to moving the meeting. I think we have more than adequate space here. If you have an overflow meeting in times past, we would move them to the basement. But as you can see today, you've got more employees out here than the public, and that is just the way it is. I mean, there's no change there at all. I'd rather see it kept the way it is because it's functional. I don't want to spend the taxpayers' dollars, and two of you ran on being conservative, and I haven't seen it yet, but I'm sure it's gonna pop up eventually. So I just can't vote for that. But I'm not opposed to meeting place, but I'm opposed to spending the money, and I don't think you're gonna gain anything by moving it.
This is a very bipartisan issue, though, moving the place and also the time. I don't think it's a conservative or liberal idea. I think the minimal cost is worth it to increase transparency. And you mentioned I ran on it. I just mentioned my opponent ran on it too.
Okay, we have a motion to move the meeting to the basement, starting in February. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, equipment, based on the estimate, 15,000. We would reproduce what we have in here, which would be portable.
And you said this did not include a TV?
Does not include a TV. We're borrowing that from Al.
We have one available.
Yes, we do. On wheels. Need a motion.
Move it.
Second? Discussion. Lisa?
Thank you, Lisa McNeil, District Court Administrator. I just wanted to make sure that however the basement gets configured, that it works for our jury orientation and our jury selection on occasion where we are conducting that in the basement, so that every week we aren't putting maintenance through hoops about, let's reconfigure the basement, and then a couple hours later they have to reconfigure. So hopefully we can work together for how it's configured so it mutually works for everybody.
That can be, I think that's the easy part.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
That is the easy part, because that's why I voted no against it. I don't know how easy, I mean, maybe it is, and there's something I'm not understanding, but we will have no permanent room of our own. It'll be a shared space, which is probably okay, but
We'll still use this.
after the fact, maybe we could have used the cafeteria and refigured it and made a permanent room, and then you could remodel that. You could have your closed session. We wouldn't have to start here and go down and come back up. I mean, it is its own room, and it's not being used. So it's just, without having architectural plans to really think long-term about this, I think we just adopted a very short-term solution, in my opinion. But I'm done. I'm late on that. I'm sorry.
I have a motion.
We're done.
All right. Any other, yes, Dennis, Riverboat.
This will be paid from gaming revenues, correct?
Correct. Anyone else? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same, no.
No?
Aye.
Okay, joint meetings with the city. Yes, sir.
Please announce it.
3 yeses, 2 nos.
I think the confusion is you said to say no when you're voting against it. We've always said aye.
I think that's a point of clarification
Yes,
that maybe the
that's
auditor
coming.
will have forward, that the use of same sign is no longer acceptable by Robert's rules. Thank
All
you.
right, we have one more, and that is to arrange joint meetings with towns in the rural area. I would not set a date on that. I would say as fast as we can get it set up. I think I'm going to have to visit with them, make sure they have a space, when they would be available, which they may not be available for a month or whatever. So I would just take a motion to allow the chair to start setting those up.
Move it.
Second?
Discussion.
I do have a question just as far as what you're envisioning. Would it be the county doing their normal business during these?
Normal
meetings?
business in a rural location with the city council, who may or may not do their normal business, and then we would have a joint meeting, which would allow people to come in. We've got 14, 15 towns, so we're not going to make it to everyone. Probably take 2 years to get that done.
I'm not uncertain. Are we having a joint meeting with the city councils of these towns
Yes,
on their city council day?
they will meet and do their business, and we will meet. It'll have to be on a Tuesday night, I think, which is going to mess with some of them, because I know some of them meet Wednesday and Monday, and some of them meet once a month, some of them meet twice a month,
Well, then,
so we're going to have to work that out.
if it's going to be a county board meeting, we'll just set it as a county board meeting for Tuesday nights,
Yes.
and that wouldn't affect the city council's actions or anything.
Well, we've got to be able to work with them. But I think it is important that the citizens in the rural area get to see this board do their thing in their town. And we may only do this once, but I think it's worth a shot. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say no. All right, we're done.
Point of order, Mr. Chair, announcement of the vote.
Pardon me?
Do you have an announcement of the vote?
You have a what?
announcement of that.
Oh, you want the announcement? That was 5 ayes. I didn't hear any no's. All right, here we go. On to the next page. Discussion and action of tributes and recognition of services. Taylor, you're up.
We had the discussion previously last week, and so I would move that the Director of Human Resources craft a program with an application process, format, certificate, and plan by which we can honor employees for longevity and excellence in customer service to present by February 3rd, and that the Board Secretary craft a resolution format by which the Board can highlight those who are dedicated to public service with implementation of such awards to begin on February 3rd and rotate the second and fourth Tuesday from supervisor to supervisor with the approval of the chair.
Need a second?
Second.
Discussion. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. All right. Number 13, discussion and action on bylaws and governing parliamentary procedure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This item is also a follow-up and asking the auditor to work concurrently with the county attorney in order to make sure parliamentary procedures and items are followed. Enabling language is found in Iowa Code. Part of those recommendations could be corrective and include items previously listed in instructions to the auditor per a previous agenda that was sent out. And I move that the auditor's office be tasked with the creation of such draft rules and bylaws in order to be ready for approval by February 3rd, in order to vote on adoption for calendar year 2015.
Need a second?
Second.
Discussion.
So you'll be basically writing out the Robert's Rules of Order? Okay, then what are we talking about?
We've seen, just using examples, I've done some of the same research, and I've ordered some materials as far as looking at the drafting a set of bylaws for you folks, rules and procedures, and the catch-all at the end of those rules and procedures that you don't have it really lined out to what you'd like, Robert's rules for.
Do you think you're able to look within the state of Iowa for that? Or will you have to look outside of the state of Iowa to get direction?
The state of Iowa, we'll be looking at the state of Iowa.
Anyone else?
I have a question on the parliamentarian. It's already set up downstairs. So where would the parliamentarian sit there? You've got him sitting next to the chairman here.
Just a definition next to the chairperson. I think you're the rule.
With a microphone, he's a lot closer.
I can live with that if that's what it means.
That's what I interpreted too.
Right. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Number 14, discussion Veterans Affairs Report. Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I met with Danielle Dempster and discussed an overview of her program. I asked her to bring something back to the board that is positive, and Ms. Dempster will be presenting at the 185th Yellow Ribbon event, not only to brief veterans of knowledge of county services, but she'll also be briefing in place of Colonel King, the head of Iowa Department of Veterans Affairs, and gave a great overview of her department. I asked her if she had any concerns that we could bring back and discuss as a board. She's concerned about a couple of things, and one that I wanted to bring up was utility increases that her department has realized over last year's bill during the same billing cycle. Increase is 766%, and so over 7.5 times what was once paid. I talked to the architect, talked to the mechanical engineer, and talked to Mid-American about the metering out there. Social services has seen an increase, but it's 128%. So there's quite a disparity, and we're looking for, I'm looking for some more information on why one department would have had a slight increase. I understand the HVAC equipment is now bringing in outdoor air, and it was a a replacement, but I'm concerned, and I know that Veterans Affairs is concerned about their utility costs and the disparity. So that's my report.
Very good.
We'll continue to investigate.
The percentages are kind of misleading because I think they paid $38 a month last year. They just paid on a square footage basis.
No, they paid on the meter. They're metered separately there.
They are metered separately
Right.
now.
They were metered separately before as well. There are actually 3 meters out there. 2 meters owned by social services. One of those meters has gone dormant, and they're no longer paying on it all. So there's 0 kilowatt hour usage. I actually pulled all of the reads from their metering. So social service has 1 meter that's gone dormant, and they're seeing 15,000 kilowatt hours for their last $712 was their last bill. And again, that's 128% of their total cost in comparison to last year's billing cycle.
Okay.
Veterans Affairs is 766%. And so, you know, being new to the budgeting process, I'm not sure why some departments pay their utilities. Other departments do not. It seems like it's based on their physical location and if we can meter them separately. But again, I know that's a concern to their budget, and if they're gonna need a budget for that accordingly. So, just trying to find out why that disparity went to such a degree. Looking for some more information from Mid-American, and they said they'd get back on the metering and if that changed during the construction and how that was allocated. And I'll bring forth any more information that I can find.
Okay, item number 15, Mr. Taylor.
This item is to address some of the scheduling time, storage space, locks, accessibility for the Tri-View building. And in there, there is a conference room. And I noticed while I took a tour of Veterans Affairs that door to that conference room has a lock on it. And understand that door may be locked to Veterans Affairs, and want to make sure that lock does not remain on that door, and think that there should be a policy wherein that shared building doesn't have basically either side locked out. And so I would put forward that the department heads out there should be able to discuss with one another the use of that shared space, as well as finding that the Veterans Affairs has storage material that is not able to be in that building, and would also ask that they be able to store their materials at Tri-View, as it's a shared building between social services and Veterans Affairs.
You asking for action?
I am. I would move that those doors to the conference room are not locked, so that accessibility cannot be gained by Veterans Affairs, and that they may use that room jointly.
Why are they locked?
Lisa
No.
has something to say.
Lisa?
I can
Yes,
address that.
thank you.
Back in 2010, when VA was asked if they would like to have a space down there, at the time, Tri-State Behavioral Health became county employees, and we put their office down there. Veterans Affairs asked for a lock to be placed on that door. Because at that time, they were concerned about confidentiality and that type of thing. That's still a great concern. We've, at length, we've discussed it with Danielle. She's got veterans that have confidential information, and our meeting, the conference room is being utilized for our mentally disabled individuals. So that lock is there so that nobody just walks through that back door. It's locked during the course of the meeting. I try to go back in there every morning and make sure it's unlocked. Some of our meetings are 4 or 5 hours long. So it is possible that door may not get unlocked right away, but I try to ensure it's unlocked every morning. But it was put there for confidentiality reasons.
So that those individuals from social services would not enter into Veterans Affairs.
Correct. There used to be a chain on both sides of the door, and I do not know what kind of a lock is Danielle? Nothing on your side? No, there is a lock on our side.
Right, and what I'm moving is that be reversed. In other words, that social services, after hours, not be allowed to enter Veterans Affairs. And if that's desirable also on social services side, which I could understand.
That is also a fire escape for our side too, so maybe there should just not be a lock on it at all. But that is
That's your
fire
only egress?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
For part of the office, yes.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's, and, I believe, when I looked back, I believe it was John Priestley that asked for that. He was concerned about their confidentiality.
Okay. So then, I would move to amend the motion that that lock just simply be removed and the department heads work out that shared space.
Need a second?
Second.
Discussion.
I think it makes sense to, share a building to make sure the conference room can be shared.
So our motion is for cooperation?
Well, and.
Take the lock off.
In the last, since we've moved out there, which was the end of June, usually Danielle's office person will send me an email, and I have a calendar up front. We write all of our meetings and stuff on. This morning, we were asked to email Karen, Danielle, and Gloria with our calendars, so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, say
Aye.
no. Okay, number 16. Discussion and action on a policy regarding contractors and substantial work. Mr. Taylor.
The question was if the county has a policy regarding who is responsible for work done by contractors from outside the county and who on behalf of the county interfaces with local contractors, with the architect, any project manager, and so wanted to see if such a policy existed.
I'm not aware of one.
What kind of contract work are you asking about?
So for example, at the Tri-View building,
So you're talking about building contractors, you're not talking about highway and.
correct.
Because all that work is led under DOT policies and procedures, so.
Right.
I just want to be sure that you weren't specific on contractors, so if it's buildings within our department, we're responsible for it because it's also out of secondary roads.
Right.
I don't know what the policy for the rest of the county.
So on physical infrastructure is what I'm looking at. I know Mike's here from Building Services, and I know you're probably speaking on something later, but
Most of them, yeah.
would you mind approaching the microphone?
At the time I've been here, most in general, we kind of oversee all buildings owned by the county here in town. Plus, like Prairie Hills, anything we get done, we easily oversee.
Okay.
Now, as far as the roads and stuff, we don't go out that far.
Okay.
Never have been. Just here.
Yes, as far as any policy, there is one, I'm not aware of any policy. What I think there's been practice is that it's a case-by-case basis, is that when the board is working with department heads or other folks and elected officials in particular areas, they work in conjunction with those department heads or elected officials. I think in the jail, sometimes you work with them as far as signing off whether work is completed to a certain point.
And then we have, Larry sat on with the architect, and Mark sat on with doing the renovation.
Ed, are you aware of any policy?
No, I'm not aware of policy. What I'm aware of is just past practice, which seems to have indicated in most cases that building services would be involved, and certainly want to use them as an advisor. I think it's just like using IT, when we've got an IT thing involved. We go to John Malloy and his folks. I think anytime we have building service issue, we should go to the experts, which would be the folks that do them. From a common sense perspective, I think it just makes sense.
Would you be, oh, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
okay.
Would you be referring to, like last week, we took an action item on Tri-View, the architect had come back with some items, or we approved some finish-up items, so it did come before the Board of Supervisors, and we do seem to do that, from what I can tell from, when we complete a project, it does come back here for final payment. So there is, there's oversight, I guess, on the funds anyway.
I just wanted to make sure that building services is involved in dealing and interfacing with contractors, and making sure that they are involved all along the way, that they're the representative of the board on physical infrastructure, not necessarily simply department heads. I think that that's going to be building services to maintain, to be trained on. And when I was making a lot of the inquiries as to why there's such increased electrical usage, the engineering company, the architect, said that it was mainly the department head, that they had very minimal contact with building services. And so, building services.
I don't think that's typical. It may have in that case, but I don't think that's generally how things
No,
work.
normally, you have your architect that you work with on this.
And who directs the architect is what I'm really getting
It all-
at.
It all starts at the board.
Mhm.
Is there a written policy like that? Not to my knowledge. It's just, the board will hire the architectural firm, and the department head will see, whatever the architect does, and then it comes back to the board for final approval.
However, in the case of the jail, building services was at the table every time. And building services worked with the contractors and were trained on the equipment and warranties. That got left down in Triview. On the on the work they did out there.
Well, it certainly makes sense for building services to know what is being installed in any of our buildings, so like Ed said, it's kind of a common precedent.
I would say the concerns that would come up in a case like that, just from a common sense perspective, are who's responsible for doing the work on that equipment? Should they be involved? And what happens to warranties on that equipment if somebody hasn't been trained or isn't aware of certain circumstances? What I always understood is that, as you were saying, everything was brought before the board to hire the architect and that type of thing. And then maybe it does make sense that we have a policy, a solid policy put in place. Who's going to follow up and work with that architect and that crew on an ongoing basis? Is it going to be just a department head, or do we have building services involved? I know with other projects we work on, security cameras is an easy example. First people we called were the people from IT. They're the people that are the experts in it. That's the people who should be involved, and I would think anything from a building perspective, especially that involve equipment that we have to work on, would be people like Mike and his folks.
I do think you need to be careful though when you state this policy, because secondary roads is a separate fund. Building services doesn't assist us on any of our buildings. Those have been the responsibility of the county engineer. We do come through the board for our contracts when we're doing major work. We follow the procedures of the county road department, or the county secondary road fund in chapter 309 of the code for any bids that we do. And as you draft a policy, I guess my suggestion is that we would leave our department out, since we are maintained and supervised. I can answer any questions.
I agree.
I will draft such a policy that the building superintendent will be understanding and involved in understanding the scope of the work, designing, directing, and interfacing with all outside contractors under the board's approval. I think it'd be inappropriate for me to probably move that right now without giving you due diligence and time to digest that. So I will table this and.
Move to table.
Move to table.
Need a second?
Second?
Discussion?
I'm assuming you'll be in contact with Human Resources and Legal Counsel to make sure that the policy's all in compliance. with everything.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Both same sign. Okay. Information item, Mr. Headed, please step forward. We had an event.
Yes, we had some wind damage out of Prairie Hills. We lost a lot of roofing, which I'm sure everybody's aware of. I got a hold of JC Roofing, who just installed the roof. Everything's gonna be covered under warranty. They actually got roofing on, sitting up on top of the building right now. It will be fixed as soon as the weather will let them do it. Right now, they try to lift up the shingles, they break, so they're trying not to ruin more. They assured me they will have it done. So I would guess the weather's supposed to change here for the better, so I'm guessing by the end of this week, hopefully they'll have it done.
How much did you lose?
I'm guessing probably 5-6 squares per easy. There's a lot. I mean, it's everywhere.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Don't leave, I have something, other comments I want to ask you. Just don't leave.
Okay,
Are we ready for 18 to move on?
you want to move to 18? All right. Hearing of any individual group to make a presentation of items on the agenda and supervisors' concerns.
Mike, we do have our water tested for drinkability in this courthouse, don't we? Just to make sure it's safe to drink. Does anyone do that, or how do?
District Health does.
District Health does?
Yes.
How often does that occur? Do you know?
Well, we do with Prairie Hills regularly, because of the facility and the water out there is not the best. They don't drink any of the water out there, even though it is okay. But we actually buy bottled water in 5-gallon jugs out there because the water fluctuates out there. So here,
Yeah,
we
what,
don't.
do we know the status of here? And is there any way?
In my time here, I've never had it tested. We do buy water for parts of the areas here. It's if you don't have a water fountain in your area, they'll put a water stand or a water fountain in.
Okay.
That's the way it's been, but I did.
Thank you. That's it.
Anyone else?
Just quickly. Sorry to interrupt. This is all for Mike as well. You guys know we've been looking for the opportunity to start the fine collections piece. And I think we're very close. We're looking at now, we've been shut down at a couple opportunities for various reasons, but we're looking at the empty space now in the mailroom. There's some things we still need to work out. I think it's very doable. I'm hoping it's not a permanent situation, but I got people waiting. We rearranged some things in my office to get it done, so I just want to get started. So I'll be coming back to you guys, if not next week, within the next 2 weeks, to have a more permanent idea of kind of where we're headed. As soon as we work out, the particulars, what it's going to take to make it into an office. So that's what we're looking at. So
I have tried to track down the mail issue, and it's a tough one. It's a moving target. As best I understand, that mail room is used to collect mail. And the mail house comes and takes it away.
Right.
The back half is a sort of break room with a fridge and a microwave, but we have cafeteria. So I think it's doable.
Just kind of, I'm sorry,
Go
it
ahead.
speaks to, I don't know if you would ever want to put this on the agenda, but once again, it's looking at the basement, how it's being used, maybe having an architect look at configuring permanent, not a temporary space for you, a permanent, not a temporary space for us. We have a lot of equipment, and I know, Pat, you're so happy to have the equipment here, but we have machines that seem to be taking up most of what could be used for people. Maybe do machines have to be moved out? I'm just wondering if it makes more sense. You can call this long-range planning. You can call this making a good decision based on expertise on space design. I would like to see us just not be in charge of figuring out space and getting someone in here that can actually look at it and get us forward for years to come, not just temporary fixes.
I completely agree that long-range planning, doing something akin to what the 2050 vision did for economic development and long-term planning, which we still have yet to discuss. But there's utility costs and all of the budgets are going up. And we have over $200,000 that Nexen has identified as projects that are rebatable of over $90,000. So energy efficiencies, long-term planning in space, will all be on the agenda. I think that'll be great.
We had that on the agenda at one time, and the cost savings, as I remember,
Yeah, and then it died.
was there.
So you're gonna bring that back in a couple weeks?
Yes, yes, I hope to have a clearer picture of what it's gonna take to make it happen. Again, we gotta make it into office space. We have 2 employees that we will be switching over or transitioning into there. We're definitely gonna need to hire a support staff person, but thankfully, we probably won't have to look at hiring an attorney, which is kind of where we're at before. So we worked those kinds of details out. But that new employee is later. We wanna have it up and running. We think we can do it with the 2 employees that we have now. And then hopefully by that time, we'll have a better idea of what we're gonna keep them permanent, because that mailroom is just not ideal for employees.
I would like to have, probably in a couple weeks, have you and the sheriff come for an information item and talk about 24/7, talk about what you're just talking about. And Sheriff mentioned to me the other day 2 or 3 more programs that are on the horizon that might be very useful.
And I love the 24/7, so hopefully we can get to that point. But that's his issue. First, so that's what I'm hoping for. But I just wanted you guys to know that that's where we're at.
Excellent.
We're looking to make that happen. So
Did you look at Patty's old office down there?
yes, it's been used. It's been used for election stuff. Pat Deal has been looking for storage and space forever, and so I'm not looking to
Are you using
do
your
anything with
office?
that.
We're using all that space.
Okay, very good.
All right.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else?
There's
You got a hand up there.
Yes.
I have been here before regarding some property that I own.
Please state your name and address.
Sharon Susie, and my address is 2909 Myrtle Street, Sioux City, Iowa. And I'm here today because I own a piece of property out on 2850 Malloy Road. This property, I've been in front of the Board of Appeals, I've been in front of the Board of Supervisors here before regarding this matter that I have with the property. I've gone in front of the City Council to talk with them. The property in 2013 was assessed for $48,000. The previous assessment was at $11,000. But during that time when I was recovering from a serious illness, the assessor, Alan Jordan, went back to the previous assessment year. At $11,000, he reverted it back to $48,000. I've been doing this, I've owned the property since 1998, and I've been in front of you guys before, in front of the board, and I'm not done. I believe, going back through all my documents, I spent a lot of hours in this, and I just got the final appeal letter from the board in Des Moines, the property I was assessed property, and even what they sent to me, well, I have the DVD or the CD. I'll leave that with you. That'll tell you about the hearing. During the hearing, I presented all these documents, 50-some pages is what I have here. And Jack Faith said only 2 questions he asked me on that telephone hearing. One is, how much did you pay for the place? And that was the one thing, and I still own it. So therefore, I tried to explain in the CD, or the CD, that the property, when I purchased it in 1998, I purchased it at $55,000 for 2 sections, Block 28, lots 1 through 22, Block 29, lots 1 through 22, both in the West Side Addition. This property is listed as residential, but there's no residence. At the time I purchased it at $55,000, the house was removed 3 years after I purchased it because of the fact it was going to either be condemned, burned down at my expense, so I removed the house. There is no house out there. All there are my horses. The assessment, when I come in front of you guys every odd year, and I missed 13, the Board of Appeals here, the Property Assessment Appeal Board, finally made a determination as far as the property. And the fact finding is here is that, and I'll go through this, I would like to share this with you guys, is that they called this it's not a vacant lot, but they called it an arm's length transaction. It was purchased on a contract, promised to buy. It was single, what do they call that? Single consideration, an arm's length transaction. I have documents that I've been in front of with Greg Lohr, Jeff Gerrans, legal matters, trying to resolve this property. The parcel number 77460, the $48,000 was changed to $19,900. I have Keller Swin again and appealed it with the property assessment in Des Moines. And that's why I'm here today, because I received their conclusion and fact finding. And although they do agree that it was assessed on the property of the square footage, front footage, there is no, the other houses that they compared this to, 2750 and another one that I had down on my paper, it was a comparison of what mine is to theirs. They have a residence, I don't. I don't have a house there, but they did not use the different calculations for square footage, front footage, which that was what they used on mine. I've contacted Alan Jordan. I've been in contact with him. Basically, he has nothing to say to me, but I did call him regarding the conclusion of this determination. The appeals board said that the property is still going to stay at $19,900. And I tried to get it lowered to $11,000, which it was before I got sick. The appeal board, property assessment appeal, sympathizes with me losing my arm and being sick, but that they will not go back and readjust 2013 when my letter here from my doctor says I could not be there. They didn't take that into consideration. So here I am today because Jack Faith only asked me one question, was how much did I pay? $55,000. What did I do in the last 14 years? I removed a $27,000 building because it was going to either be red tagged, torn down. It was a danger. I covered the well up. There's a well there. I enclosed it and got it covered for safety. I've done everything I can to make this property a nice property. It was a dump when I bought it. I have papers here from the seller that I've been through so many legal things. But the reason I'm here today to share this is that on the back of the Assessment Appeal Board, it says here basically that the Board of Review granted the protest in part by reducing the 2014 assessment, $19,900, which representing $6,800 in land value and $3,100 in improvement value, but it's at $19,000. We lost $10,000 there, but I'm getting stuck with $10,000. I have everything here. I would like to share it with you. I invite anybody to come out with me. This property is never going to be used as a residence. So why is the land being assessed at $48,000 when it's only 2.49 acres? At what he calculated this at 20,000 square feet at $1.61 an acre, 80,000 square feet at 20 cents a square foot, and then 8 cents a square foot for the excess. That's what Mr. Jordan has assessed that property for. But in comparison to what this says to the neighbors that, well, they have a house, I guess I can put one too, feasibility of building a home. Feasibility of building a home? There is not going to be a home. I tried to share this with everybody. That if I'm going to be charged for $20,000, $80,000 in excess, then Mr. Dick Owens across from me should be the same way. he's got more land than I have. I only have 2.49 acres of land there. The guy on the other side of me has 1 million some square feet. He has 6 parcels, I have it here, of land. But I was the only one out of 44 property parcels that was changed for 48,000 from 11. Now, I'm dealing with it. I was here the end of September in front of George Wallerton and you guys regarding this matter. I did get the determination from the Property Assessment Appeal Board, and I asked them to send me a complete copy of this file. In this file, there's nothing that Jack Fay even presented except asking me one question: what did I pay for it? On that CD, you're going to hear me say I paid $55,000, but I overpaid. It was too much. But the house had to come down. It was a $27,000 assessed house, which the seller to me said, this is what we're going to ask for it. You've got a house out here, but it was condemned, ready to burn down. I feel that you are invited to come out with me to look at it, and I can show you that this is very unfair. And when you talk about $15,000 to set up down below for your hearings, each hearing is only 10 minutes. But you want to spend $15,000 to set that up, and then you want cover so you can't see me and I can't see you. But I'm standing here now looking at you. I think that's unfair to the public. And I think the public needs to know also, out of all this time I've spent here doing this, and I appreciate you listening to me, neither did I ever know that when it was assessed at $11,000 and it went to $48,000, did I ever know that year of 2013 that if you don't protest it every odd year and you did it the year before, then it jumps back up. That's not fair. Taxpayers should not have to bear that burden. I put a lot of bad hours into this.
So
and
what are you asking us?
I'm asking you that I have papers here from the board we're going to be going in 90 days or less, 80 days, with people that are going to get their new assessments in the mail. We're going to spend a lot of man hours listening to us. You spent more time listening to me now than you would at the hearing at 10 minutes. I'm saying that what I have here is unfair. It also says on the back that the land is at $6,800, $3,100 for the building. Now, do I pay $19,900 or do I pay $9,900? It's a $10,000 difference here.
Okay.
Where did it go?
You're dealing with the Sioux City assessor, Al Jordan. You were in Sioux City, right?
It's in Woodbury County.
Well, but it's in Sioux City, and they have a separate assessor. And you've gone through the process of appeals, and you've gone through an appeal at the state, right?
And they made an error by it, yeah.
Okay. I guess I don't know what you're asking us to do. We can't overturn any of those.
But what I'm asking you to do is that somewhere along the line, Mr. Jordan is not going to talk to me. I'm trying to have him explain what happened here. $6,800 and it's $48,000. This is where I'm coming from. Little things like this that are a mistake. I'm here because the city council doesn't have any control. You don't have any control. And who is going to take responsibility with someone like me standing up here trying to fight for what is right? You make the law. Can you break the law? I think that's unfair. I did nothing to have this happen. Somebody has to stand up and say, Mr. Jordan has no, once it leaves him and it goes to the appeal or the property assessment board, that's it. He says he's done. He doesn't have any control. So then you have to go with them. The last meeting I had in his office less than a month ago, I said to him, who's on your board? He couldn't even answer me. I said, who's on the board? So I know who I'm dealing with. And he said, oh, you caught me off guard. That's what he said to me. I'm here because I need to express my feelings that what I received, if I see any of you at that hearing, are you on the board? Will you be down there?
Yes.
Yes, you will.
We collectively along with the city council and the school districts. Do we have the power to overturn the the assessors conference? No, we have one vote out of 3.
Well, I think what I'm here for today is this is an eye-opener. I am not a lawyer. I have no idea what the law is, but I know what's right and what's not right. And when I got this back, now what do I do? Go to district court? Is that my next place to go? And tell them I made a mistake? I need help. Here it is if anybody wants to see it or copy of it. Here's the CD. That is from the hearing. It's not an arm's length sale. It's not a feasibility for a residence. And then when I hear you're going to put up this for the hearings, and with the screen covered, Mr. Jordan, and how much you're going to pay for that, and I'm going, oh my gosh, don't you want to see us face to face?
Yes.
Think about it.
Did you experience those desks downstairs?
I was upstairs when the last hearing I was here in 2014, you were up there, was up in his Woodbury County, up there in the assessor's office. I went in the back room to the right, and we all sat at a table. And my husband brought me because I couldn't drive last year. I've been upstairs before in an empty big room, up on, I don't know what floor it is,
Fifth.
with all these covers in front of me, which I thought was very, very embarrassing because I couldn't see any faces. That was in 2012. I couldn't see any faces, and so I had to go like this to see who I'm talking to.
I understand
I'm
your
here
dilemma.
just to share this with you.
And it's difficult when you can't get government to work for you.
No, I just want to-
Unfortunately, I don't know that we can get it to work for you either. I guess my first reaction is you probably should hire an attorney.
I know, that's what Gina Gooseman, when I called the law firm, that's when they said, we'll put $1,000 down and we'll work it out. Well, when you look at $1,000 and my taxes went from a year, $242 on just that one side, to $1,098. Wouldn't that be better just to pay the taxes instead of letting him go $2,000 to fight this? Why am I not capable of fighting it myself? I've done all the work. To hand it over to him, I'm very capable of speaking for myself.
Yes, you are.
And I'm very capable of presenting it. Here it said that Jack Faith, he did not have to do anything on that hearing. It was me that had to prove. In these papers it says that, and I proved it. Because I have 59 papers here, everything, showing the board of review, which I sent it to them in a timely manner, 21 days before. I sent it to them. I got nothing back from Jack Faith, nothing. But 19,900, and then they can't even come up with the right number. 6,800 for land and 3,100 for the buildings. I'm just saying, again, I'm gonna see you in 90 days, 60 days, if I'm still alive. Yeah.
Anybody have questions of her?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I wish we could help you.
Well, if anybody would like to come out, Mayor Doherty in 2002 or 2003, when I talked to Mayor Doherty on the phone, he sent out Melvin Obey. And when he sent out Melvin Obey to look at the property, which they did, they lowered it from 48,000 to 11,000. Melvin Obey did, and he came out on the site and looked at it. And that's all I'm asking is that if somebody has any concerns, don't bring it up on your computer and iPad. I've got copies that I sent to them. Come out and look at it and provide it. If you guys want to keep this or you want to visit it, you can have it. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? I have one real quick one. I'm working with John Malloy to put together a calendar that we can pull up, much like the county email, and we'll ask that we all submit when we're not going to be here. I guess Tuesday is the only important date, but also include department heads, which they don't know about yet, and would have Karen put those things in. So if you wanted to see if someone was in or out, you could go to this calendar and it would all be there. Very simple. He uses it in his department, and I'll forward you the link to his so you can see what it looks like.
That would just be for supervisor, department heads, and not other elected officials.
If they want to, that'd be great, but that's up to them. Okay, I propose we take a 5-minute break because I've got to go. And there's bad news. The good news is we've got 20 minutes. And the bad news, if you got a problem, it's going to be tough. We have to be somewhere by 1:30.
Okay, not a problem for me. Ready to go? Are you ready to go?
Well,
Mr. Chairman, are you waiting for Larry? Okay. Do you know how you're going to approach budgets this year? Any different than what we kind of done in the past? Or
well, we're gonna tinker a little bit. We don't have it down. All right, let's go ahead. Dennis?
Okay, what we're gonna start with first is conservation. I did do a handout here that I sent to the Board of Supervisors, and I hand out the rest of the news media and the rest of people today. It will be coming out in your board packet this week on the ones we will be doing next week. So I guess we're ready to start. It does give a summary. What the summary does, I go by department first, and then by division, and give you the current year, the proposed year coming up, the percent of increase by dollar and by percentage wise. I broke it down to salaries and benefits, I broke it down to operating costs, and I broke it down to capital improvements or capital equipment. In the future, eventually I want to get into more detail on this, but for now, this is where I'm at. To get more detail, breaking down the operating more. But for now, this is the start in the direction we want to go, I believe. So I guess now it's open to start going through them.
So if we go to the third page,
Yes.
in essence, he's asking for 9.6% less.
The second page.
Third.
Okay, third, you're getting.
Oh, I'm in the wrong one.
Yeah, start page 1, and I will number these pages so it's easier. Conservation, I wrote it down by tax fund, and then I wrote it down by
10% cut.
non-tax. His actual operating costs and salaries and capital improvements on a tax-related and general basic are 2.29%. CPI for last year, based off ISAC, I got 12-year history, it was 1.6%. Included in this salaries are raises and any benefit changes, so they are included in there. And any step increases for any of their union personnel.
So his budget is going up 2.29,
Yes,
and his non-tax stuff is going down.
it's going 0. Yep. The non-tax, to explain that, he does get a REAP grant, he does get the user fees from the parks to offset any expenses he's had. The reason that board approved this many, many years ago was for user fees instead of tax dollars for any improvements on any of the parks in Little Sioux, Browns, Lake Snyder's, Snyder's Bend, whatever. That's correct. You can go to more into it if you'd like.
Okay, board, questions?
I went through this budget, and I can't come up with a thing. That's me.
I can't either.
Move to receive.
We're not even going to use 5 minutes. This isn't working.
Thank you.
Can I say anything? I would like to point out that I do have 3 board members here, and some of the new supervisors may not right now. Chris Elmazant, our past president, Mark Taylor, who we just reappointed last week, and Todd Nixon, the current president. So I appreciate them taking the time to be here today too.
We could cut their salary.
Good, yeah. Well, now much probably. Hopefully, I spell things out. I tried to spell things out in the memo that I sent out, just to point out where we're at on some things and some issues. I was glad to hear Supervisor Taylor's comments this morning about energy issues. That's a big one in our budget that we're trying to deal with. And we are looking into a solar application out there. It's kind of exciting. We'll see whether that goes anywhere for us or not.
May I ask you a question?
Yes.
Have you had Mid-American, they contract now with Clear Results instead of Nexen? You know, I was looking through these original energy assessments. Have they gone through any of your facilities, your buildings, to identify either HVAC, lighting, any sort of equipment that's rebatable, that building services or your department could help to implement? Has that been done at all?
I don't think we've done just a separate study like that of the nature center where offices are would be the main facility. The only other place they cover for us is the Zoo Park, and we've got a number of facilities over there in the park, of course. We have worked with them as we're upgrading some lighting out there for LEDs and things, and gotten a lot of rebates through that system. But to do a full energy audit, we have not done that out there.
I believe it's free.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that maybe we.
Yeah, certainly.
Move to receive the budget.
Need a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, Don, you can go back home.
Please contact me if you got any questions about anything.
It will be in a birthday too.
Okay, Dennis, Communication Center.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the Communication Center. This budget here is determined through the City Council, the Board of Supervisors, and I don't know if there's other representatives on that board. And right now, this is a preliminary number I got from the city's finance director, and it could be changed up or down. Probably go, if anything, it'll probably go down, probably won't go up. But
We sort of back into this, don't we?
Yes. I'm Glenn Sutterby, the Director of the Communications Center. Our division is under a intergovernmental coordinated between the city and county, Sargent Bluff and North Sioux, which we bring in revenue from North Sioux and Sargent Bluff for break off setting our operating budget. Up to date, these numbers have been provided to me from city finance. We have had a preliminary city manager review. These numbers were the result of that meeting. Our entire budget was $2,072,885, and the county's portion of that budget under the 2080 agreement would be $566,578, with revenue again from North Sioux at $54,979, and Sergeant Bluff at $89,948, along with received some tower rent in the amount of $44,700. The rest would be towards the city's portion of their operating budget.
So this is 60 grand less than we paid last year.
Currently in today.
Okay.
I just have one question, Glenn. Have you not spent the county's money yet this year, or what's?
They bill the county on a monthly basis according to what's being expended. I believe it's broke out under the 30.2%. So as far as where the difference in that money, that would have to be between Dennis and Donna Porter, the city. So.
Because you only spent $180,000 in your date. That's why I wondered if there was a county project.
Yeah, an equal amount comes out every month that I see in my budget, but the comparison would have to be between Donna and Dennis. Because
we do get billed every month $44,420. We were behind a little bit because there's some bills that didn't get processed through the processing scheme they go through. We did a budget amendment back in just recently where we had to amend the budget and put in past years and current year. I'm in a process now meeting with Donna Porter and Michelle Brown up in WIC to get this thing straightened out. I believe we are caught up now, but we're going to meet and make sure we are caught up.
You're caught up, but not, our books are not caught up then.
Correct. Correct. A lot of this is done in January. You're looking at 6-month terms.
I take a motion at a savings of $660,000.
Move to receive.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Thank you, sir. All right, Danielle.
Hello. Well, with my budget, I've just made 3 changes. The largest of that being the energy. I increased it from 600 to 1750. That was based on estimating out from the bill that we had gotten in November. And that was $250, a little more than that. But the next bill I got was almost $400. And so if nothing changes in our building, that amount won't be enough to cover our electric. So our commission is hopeful that there'll be some changes to hopefully bring those costs down so that we can cover those.
You're still coming in at about 1.25% under the current budget.
Well, the only thing I increased was the electric and the school fees, because those have gone up a little bit.
You have less salaries and benefits.
That
Not
I
much,
can't answer.
about $4,000.
The difference there is between single and family health insurance. They had a health insurance issue where it did drop the cost down.
Which would explain the 1.25.
Yes.
Okay. Questions?
So all your increase is just the one line up to 1750.
There was one other increase, which was the schools. It went from 400 to 500 because our school fees have increased.
400. Okay, so I mean, what was originally submitted, you're increasing one line item.
I actually don't know what to increase it though, because of, I mean, if I base it off of $400 bills, is that what you want me to do?
Right.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if that bill's right, because Jeremy's looking into that, to see if it can be by space or by meter or whatever. But what I thought I heard say, you want to increase it to 1,750.
That's what yes, that's what I estimated.
Okay, and
Before
after,
I got the next bill.
after more detail, Jeremy threw his issue there, it can be adjusted by the board.
Okay.
Okay. Need a motion to receive
As amended.
as amended.
I don't see the, what's the line item that utilities has increased?
The line items would be
4310.
4310. Well, you have 1750 in there already.
Right, I do.
So there is no change, it's just received as.
There's no change so
issued.
far.
Yes. Okay.
Need a motion to receive as is.
Correct.
Move it.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Thank you, Danielle.
What, you got, wait, you gotta go through the system part and your grant part too,
Okay.
2 more budgets.
No
Uh-oh.
changes in those. But sure, I can answer any questions about that.
Maybe explain that grant a little bit to our 2 new supervisors.
Sure, no problem. We get an allocation from the state for $10,000. It's meant to improve our services to veterans, and so whatever we spend it on must improve our services to living veterans. And that's the only qualifiers for it. This year, we're gonna purchase a new copy machine with that money. We have one currently, so it wouldn't be supplanting, it would just be an improvement. And that's almost half of the money. I usually wait until towards the end of the year in case we have to use it for something. And then whatever we can do to improve our services, we do towards the end of the year.
We need a motion to receive
Yeah,
that.
that's what I was gonna ask Pat. Should we receive motion to receive each one of these divisions here, Pat, or can we do a lump sum for veterans affairs?
Are they separate budgets?
Yes.
Yeah, just do it separate.
Okay.
Need a motion to receive.
Move it.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Last one.
Assistance to veterans.
We haven't proposed any changes to the budget because we didn't use our budget last year, so we're not gonna increase any numbers, but we'd like to keep them the same.
And this is used for,
It's for emergency financial assistance to veterans and their dependents.
I know this is a tough budgeting because you don't know what you're going to spend, but we just haven't spent any money out of there. And I don't understand why.
I don't know exactly why. services out there for veterans to use. I think some of them are going to other avenues, but we have had reduced requests. So of course, we can't spend it if we were not asked.
Well, I'm not concerned about what you have this year, but I'm concerned about going forward. Those requests are gonna be paid down.
It should be based on how the economy goes. I mean, we've had better times, better jobs, and we're still working on that. Of course, we talked about it at Home Base Iowa, but you never know what your requests are gonna be.
I hate to be the only screwed sitting here.
What are you thinking?
Well, it's like provisions assistance. We spent $250 out of a $6,000 line item. We tax for that.
That's used for groceries and household goods.
And I'm all for it, except we're not using the money.
I understand.
When was the last time we did use it all?
All of it. We had to come back and ask for more money in 2003. I think I used all of the budget 4 or 5 years ago.
What you can do for your own information is go look at your fiscal year 13 and 14. That's where the actual amount of money was spent. So if you take health and assistance, it just keeps going down.
The other thing is I heard that there's, what, 380,000 veterans coming back?
I don't have figures on that, but the briefing that I did was pretty small. But they said that it was up in the air, that they were going to have more deployments and more people ready for deployment.
It is a lot of years to not use.
Mr. Stallman.
Something to think about is the vet court, and I think that we're working on, I think you're there, Mark, aren't you? For
Yes.
the vet court. I think we would identify more people through that for those services. I think we'll see that happen as we start bringing veterans in. I think one of the issues is a lot of veterans don't reach out for the help. They try to do it on their own. And I think you could see that go to a good use through that vet court as we start identifying the veterans for that.
I think that's reasonable as well.
What's your thought? I got to tell a story that's just, I'm dying to do this. A friend of ours passed away a year and a half ago. And his wife, per chance, stopped out at Veterans Affairs, not knowing what might be out there. After visiting with Danielle and her folks, she is now getting $3,000 a month in health insurance.
And health insurance.
And health insurance. She didn't have a clue she wasn't going to go. Somebody told her to get out there. So he served plenty. So, you know, she's deserving, but had it not been for Veterans Affairs, she wouldn't have had a clue. So it made a difference in living and not living. Is there any interest in Dan?